which they don't damn have.
No.
You know, none of them. And all this is also why you ask for the bonds, surety bonds, because everyone who claims to be a government official in constitutional government are alleging to be constitutional officers, which is why they call themselves officers, and they are not. You know, so they're training the people to keep calling them officer, and then when the people call them officer, is what you call trust law. The people themselves are signing their right of estate to that person. Then they exercise it. You know, so you never call them officers because they're not. You know, of course, you got to get your head clear and stop practicing those things that delude to slavery. You know, those words and principles that delude to slavery. Go ahead, good brother.
Islam, I wanted to just make a statement. It seems so kind of like unbelievable when you go to the church because the ministers are so kind and giving and sharing. And what you're saying is true.
Implying to be giving and sharing.
Right.
And they're praying, P-R-E-Y, stealing the widow's pennies.
Yeah.
And give them nothing. So continue.
And it seems so unbelievable that it would really be exactly what it is.
Yeah.
What it is you're saying. And it just feels like, it feels so,
Deceitful?
yeah, that's the right word. Deceitful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just feels so deceitful.
Because it is.
Because when you look at them, a lot of them are, a lot of it is crumbling down. You know, it's crumbling.
This is where the Bible and the Septuagint says that they, like in the book of John 8:44, when the Europeans claim to be Jews, and Yahshua says, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. So now you're dealing with delegation of authority. But you seek to kill me, a man who is telling you the truth. You are of your father, the devil.
Yeah.
And the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and when he speaks of a lie, he speaks of his own kind. But yet, that's not emphasized in the books in the churches, is it?
No.
So they're claiming to be somebody they're not, and what they've been doing, getting us to claim to be somebody we're not, and controlling the narrative. And again, you know, truth is kind of rough because we've been trained to think that we've been self-righteous and that we've been spiritual, and we haven't at all. At all, you know. And so we must correct that within our own hearts and minds. And of course, at that point, you know, the protocols will become automatic. You know, they'll just pour out of you. You know, and so people don't need to think that this stuff is complex because they always try to make people think it's, oh man, you gotta be studying for years. It's not. No, it's not. It's common sense. That's why it's called common law. But they train people not to use common sense, and therefore they're disattached from the common law.
So, Your Grace, what is the Constitution of Man?
The Constitution of Man is really the salts and the phosphates that regulate the different, the 12 different constellations that are actually formulated in the alchemical workings of the womb, which is why you see the Ankh representing government in the ancient world. Is not for them to worship that symbol, it's for understanding that it comes from the womb. And that qualifies you to govern. So, but you need to understand the workings of the womb. And so the deal of it is, when a woman is conscious of that, and this is back to when you look in the questionnaire and you see the woman being unconscious, preoccupied with the cares of the world.
Yeah.
So that means that they're misusing the womb. And so this is why you see humanity written on her womb. As long as she's unconscious, we're done. And so we must make conscious of those principles without her thinking we're rejecting her. But we can't participate in that fraud that she's been promoting in the name of the church against herself and her own offspring and expect to be well. It's not going to happen. You know, so it's kind of difficult to reject that paradigm because many of them think you're rejecting them. And when it's not, it's just that you already know in that state of mind they will destroy you. You know, and this is again why in your secret societies they will use the apron, like it's represented in the Garden of Eden by Adam having the great leap over his groin.
Yep.
That's what the apron represents, which means take control of your lower self, the lower three chakras. And this is where Samson and Delilah is represented in the Septuaginta. It's not rejection of woman, it's understanding that you look at it wrong, she'll kick your ass. What point you don't get this? She's the gateway. What you think and what the priesthood have told you, you can think that stuff all you want to, but you ain't gonna beat your mother. So we need to shed that whole paradigm and encourage her to do the same and give it in such a way that she don't think that we're rejecting her, because that's what the European will play. That we're rejecting her. And then get her to counter you. And this is why they've been so powerful. Because they have trained the women to actually support the Nicene Creed in the name of Jesus, and wonder why our communities are so broken, why our families are so broken, why the IRS takes everything, why the youth are dying younger and younger. We're out of order. But we've been trained to think that the dogma systems we've adopted equals spirituality. It absolutely does not. But people somewhat have limited courage to tell the truth because people won't like them. And so they have a tendency to support the systems, saying, well, people will begin to understand. You either want to serve the creative forces, the cosmic mother, or you're going to serve Rome. And there is no gray area. What you're not going to get away with is serving two masters, which is what people keep doing.
Hot or cold, no lukewarm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is where in the book it says, these people claiming Lord, 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 and their hearts are far removed. That's what it symbolizes.
Islam.
Their hypocrisy.
Okay, Islam, you mentioned the 12 salts of salvation. So, just for clarity, you're talking, so it's 9 months, so you would take the 3 salts after your birth.
Yes, this is what you would look at for healing. Meaning that, like, for instance, you already know you conceived in water, born in water type thing.
Yes.
Conceived in earth, born in earth type thing. You look at the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and now you look at the Solomon's temple, no different than, you're dealing with mathematical building. So you look at the chart of the mother, and you would study the nature of the concepts that she's in when she allows that seed to be impregnated. Because she is key to this temple that she's making.
So do I take the 3 months is sufficient of my mother
This
or
is
myself?
what you do. This is what you do. All of the salts that are built in the wombs, in the months, they call them monthly, that you're in the womb, your mother alchemically has built that.
Okay.
When you come out of the womb, your consciousness of the other salts, starting to use foods, mainly foods, and the different salts to add to your diet, that's how you complete the temple. And it will eliminate a lot of sicknesses that exist among the people. It's just simply knowing the constitutional man, it's not a belief system, it's understanding and comprehending how you are made. Who made you? Allah. Who's Allah? The Father of the universe. Now the deal is that's presented to the people in the concept that they've been told the dogma systems. However, when you go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, you know that paternity is a process and not a gender. So father is a gender operations. Not a gender operations, but a process of creation. Still coming from woman herself, the builder. That's why she's referred to as the grand architect. And all of your different lodges always have female names. And they also, will promote either female names or some name of some Moorish ruler, etc. And why, when they get, the 32 degree, they get certificates saying Assalamu alaikum and a holy name, etc. Because they already know that Islam, masonry is Islam. But it's given in allegorical stories, signs and symbols. And so they want people to reject it so they can think that these people that are abusing the law are abusing the law because they're Masons, as opposed to recognizing that they're hiding the truth from the masses so that they can abuse the masses. And this is where H.O.R.A.M operations come in, the Unum Sanctum operations to keep the masses out of truth, out of the law. And this is back to H.O.R.A.M says, I want brave men and women to help me in my great missionary work. You know, once you start looking at statements he made, then you go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, you start recognizing that your concepts are all wrong. Then you also recognize why there's an attic chamber for people who are growing up. And then people who don't understand these things thinking that you're abandoning the platform because you ain't going around being spooky. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And it's really not true. You're growing up and you're rendering on the Caesar what the Caesars. You know, like we say, when I was a child, I thought as a child I did the things that children do. When I became a man, I put away my childish things. You know, this is what you must understand. Those are degrees. You know, and so you'll do that which is necessary to clean this mess up. And of course, people that are held to the servitude mentality think that you're abandoning Allah and abandoning God type thing, not knowing what either one of them mean, not knowing that Allah is a feminine name, and not knowing that God is not a being. God is a station, and it's a verb transitive. It's not a noun. You know. So these things are known, they just aren't taught. So the advantage that Moorish Americans have with the coming of New H.O.R.A.M is that you've been exposed to this knowledge. And while there's resistance, you know, on inside and outside, you know, you've been given keys that will begin to liberate you. And of course, you recognize that your concepts were all wrong, and that people will reject you thinking that you're dumping the club game. But once you study, when H.O.R.A.M says, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers, you know, you begin to recognize all your concepts about what you think religion is entirely incorrect. Now it's uncomfortable because now you got a lot of dumping to do. And a lot of people discovering that aren't willing to not be liked by the club members, which is why a lot of people, grand governors and grand sheiks of the Moorish Science Temple of America, get upset when Moors find out about the Great Seal, because it exposes them too. You know, because they should have been teaching these people these principles generations ago. And that our people have been suffering under the Christian black codes unnecessarily, but yet their nationality cards don't even know it's an instrument of diversity. And be the first ones to listen to them grand governors condemning consular court activation, which is enforcement of the Constitution, and their nationality card. You know, again, and this is where, you know, you have to, you know, be patient and keep, you know, entertaining those things necessary to you know, make the people erudite in these areas, you know. And this is again why the prophet said, you know, these people who are, you know, going through these colleges and stuff are just learning how to dance to the hoops better. You know, they're under animal training thinking that they're getting erudition, and they're not. And this is how the priesthood has kept their grip, their iron hand grip over the people, because the people keep thinking they are their government, and therefore submit to the legislation, which is absolutely colored. When H.O.R.A.M said you're not Negro, black, or colored, etc. You know, we don't need to go into that. The deal of it is for yourself, for all of those, and plus with the scholars and writers among yourself, in relationship to the constitutional operations of man. This is why I mentioned Hagia Sophia, because that is a whole lesson of consciousness in itself. And you'll understand that the violations are not just Europeans. You understand? And so, again, at the same time, you know, the Europeans' version of Christianity is really Constantinianism. That must be understood, so they can stop following the Europeans in the name of Christianity. You know, and so by them not knowing these things, there's often the concepts that Islam, the creed that they're learning, is something separate from Christian doctrine, when actually it is a sect of Christianity. The real cosmological Christianity, but it's also been contaminated by what you call the H.O.R.A.M. and those who are interpreting what the prophet said or not said, and they've been presenting their argument to scientists as to what Islam is and Islam is not. Now, H.O.R.A.M said, he says, the day's going to come that you're going to have to straighten that mess up. Then, you know, and everything else. And I understand and comprehend that people have been so minimized that they really don't have a lot of faith in their own self.
That's right.
You know, but that'll be all right. You know, in due time, as the people become conscious, other nation states will start sending signals to let you know that you're right. And that, you know, that without arguing with you about being sold out, you know, making certain statements that make it obvious. Now, what you do with that information, logically, it's on you. However, what they're telling you, this is why, like, for instance, years ago, I wrote an article about Mumia Jamal, right? When they set him up with that murder of the cop in Philadelphia. And the positive response I got was actually from Denmark. You know, actually from Denmark. And they comprehended and understood, but yet many of our people was criticizing it. Do you understand? Because they're in them black codes type thing. However, the rest of the world, when you begin to take a solid position, you encourage the rest of the world. And that is a motivation that's going to take place, that's going to deny Rome's power to move these instruments, i.e. the public and private paradigm. All right, is there any other questions in relation to the constitution of man?
So, well, I wanted to add on to what Noble was saying. I ain't never been to no churches where they was nice. They usually yelling at you, right? And then on top of that, the misconcept of the alleged municipal courtrooms not being churches, they yell at you.
They're really religious organizations.
Religious organizations, right.
Want to, this is why when you see H.O.R.A.M, when he adopted the religious affidavit, it was for that purpose.
805.
But he reminds you that it's law, order, and governmental principles.
Right.
You know, once you you got to purge yourself of the misconceptions.
Yeah.
And understand that H.O.R.A.M had come to the people in a concept that they were contaminated in, but set a platform where they could evolve and learn other things.
Islam.
And this is why he specifically said, your concepts are all wrong.
Islam.
He did it. You know, but again, a lot of people, as they get the information, they want to polish it like a vase and put it on the shelf and think as he brought this information is where it's supposed to stay.
Right.
Not
You're
true.
supposed to move it. You're supposed to move it.
Not true. You know, but a few who have honor and integrity, who can think for themselves. This is why the prophet also said, if I could just get you all thinking again, you save yourselves. Which means it's common sense.
Right. Clear.
And the common law is common sense. Stop making this stuff metaphysically complex. It isn't.
Right.
And we keep allowing traitors among us to try to act like this is some kind of super duper attic chamber stuff that you can't exercise.
Because we ask the higher questions and we shut it down.
Of course.
Because it can't answer it.
Oh, of course. And then they're accusing you of abandoning the platform when that's not true.
Correct.
They abandoned the platform with their great sellout in the 30s.
When you told us when you stand, they'll fall. Status is everything.
Everything.
They're making a jurisdictional claim, but we're talking about status and birthright.
And this is again why we did share with people the Dungy case to put things in perspective. Because a lot of times the people will look at the Dred Scott case, which is used by the operators of the United States Service Corporation and actually used by other corporate states in relationship to the capacities and the incapacities of persons declared as citizens. And so they look at the Dred Scott case as that no people of African descent can ever be U.S. citizens, right? Citizens of the United States, which is absolutely true. But not understanding jurisdiction, they get caught up with their Negro leader guys, 32-degree Masons, marching and trying to get Negro citizenship, which means they're seeking a benefit under the corporate operations, which takes them out of life and put them into a civil liberal mortus platform willingly. You know, and all of these people are always talking about God and Jesus and Allah without qualifications. And they've been getting away with it because the people aren't really taught. You know, this is again why a lot of them are upset with us, because here at House of Reawakening Minds, we will touch subject matter that they've been dancing around. And in the process, when people get over their emotions and their own biases, they will liberate themselves. Because truth, doesn't recognize personal mistakes. It is what it is. Now, what you do with it, that's on you. And they also can't say that nobody told them. It's not good, bro.
Islam, if it is that other nations like the Philippines adopt the U.S. Constitution, they're not
All right.
teaching them the...
Let's stop this just for everybody. Number one, the Philippines is named after Philip II, Pope of Rome. When you go into the culture, they're mortals, they're Moors. You can even find it in the ordinary dictionary. It's not even hidden. So people need to know what the Filipino War was all about. It's all about crushing the Moorish culture and writing us out of history. And also creating schism among our people.
They're not teaching them about the trees that...
Of course not.
Yeah.
But this is the advantage that conscious Moors have and their responsibility to take order and to take cognizant action in these areas. And why H.O.R.A.M said, in order to change the people, you must change their literature. And of course, when you do, people will resist at first, but after a while, it dawns on them that their concepts are wrong, and they will develop in their own time. But the deal with this is that they must shed their naivety. And they're going to find that their naivety or false concepts that they thought was religion. And it gets quite ugly. Meanwhile, the families are being dissolved under the Margaret Sanger operations under Unum Sanctum, while they're sitting around dealing with belief systems that they refuse to render unto Caesars. All right?
So in other words, in terms of like the Philippines, the Constitution was imposed on them?
It's not that the Constitution was imposed on them, the brand names were imposed.
Brand names, right.
And so even like say when you deal with Hindustan, or what they call India, they will in the definition refer to them as Mohammedans.
Correct.
To let you understand the background. Now, if you don't get that, you get caught into the mysticism systems. But like you can just take this dictionary here and go look at Philippines and you'll see in their etymological definition, they're Moors. It's never hidden.
Right.
It's that our people ain't being taught by people who should be telling them because they don't want to rock the boat. They want to control the people in these little club narratives that they call on the Moorish Science Temple of America, which have been neutralized by Woodrow Wilson and the pedophile, what's his name, J. Edgar Hoover, with COINTELPRO actions, who were giving children as rewards to do color of actions against all Asiatic organizations. That's what the COINTELPRO operation is. So rather than the people looking at these people being pedophiles and baby killers, they look at them as being their government. And then they deny the evidence that's researchable for anybody. And this is what's been going on.
You said... Islam, you said pedophile is different from...
Matter of fact, they're pedivores.
Pedivore. You said that was different. I tried to find the word in the
they've been eating the children.
Dictionary.
Let's get past that. They've been literally eating the children and harvesting them. Like for real. And one of the favorite cuts of morgue for the Europeans in what they call their elite is the thigh of Asiatic males between 23 and 24 years of age. They murder them and steal the thigh bone. That's their hand hocks.
Why the thigh bone? Why the hamlock?
Because the flesh is tender. And you gotta remember the Europeans are hybrids.
Right.
Which is why they're like rare flesh.
Correct.
And teach people that meat is the morgue, when meat is really fruits and nuts.
That's right.
Everything is misclassified. And so people go to the morgue to eat and wonder why they're sick. Well, it's true. And for those of you who want to do a little research, look at suits that are going on around the world, where suits in other nation states are against the United States Corporation Company for human DNA in all of the burgers. Whether you're dealing with the burger joints or you're dealing with the food stores, etc., the supermarkets. All of them have human DNA in it.
The fake Jew, Finkelstein, that did the article on that and referenced that.
Say it again.
Finkelstein, I forget his first
Yeah,
name.
Rabbi Finkelstein.
Rabbi Finkelstein,
He
correct.
says he says it bluntly that these people are so hypocritical they can tell you the truth
Yup.
and that they will continue
Still
because
follow.
they're black-hearted hypocrites and that they don't have to lie. They can tell the truth. You know, so this is where an average of 142,000 average in that area of youth disappear at North America every year. And that's the average number.
142,000?
142,000. And people pretend that they don't know anything about it.
So to add on to that, during the so-called up-and-coming race to the predator seat, the dude drunk said that clearly human beings were the best investment.
Because they are the stock.
Right. Which means that they was clearly
They are the
saying they were
investment.
already buying and selling.
That's what it's been.
So that's been a commodity of the U.S.
That's
since
what
before the
institutionalized servitude that they're calling slavery is. It's been institutionalized. This is what the Act of Congress 1871 was all about. And the coup d'etat against Abraham Lincoln. That's what that's all about. The introduction and solidification of feudal law operations under the secret treaty of Verona, undermining the republic, and then getting the people to think it's legitimate government, and then training them like animals that they are accordingly. And so they're promoting their own enslavement, thinking that they're being spiritual. Now that's the truth. Go ahead, sis.
Peace. Peace. I wanted to know, am I correct in thinking, in connection to the women's sanctum, if that's saying you can't, they're the end all be all, you can't judge them, only God can judge them. Am I correct in saying I'm Muslim, only Allah can judge
You're
me?
born,
So
this the whole
get out
deal. It's
there.
not a belief system. You're born from your mother's womb Muslim.
Right.
It is a fetal, or what you call the fetus itself. Muscles, bones, electrical system.
Okay.
You're born Muslim, you can't be made Muslim. Even these things, once you understand these things, you also don't get caught in the spookism that's promoted in the name of Islam, where they use guilt and arbitrary rules to try to steal, because what it really is, when you really study, it's designed to steal your personality
Going back to Allah being
and make you a cookie cutter club member. And people start artificially being what they're absolutely not, and then accusing the Prophet Muhammad for it, and then wonder why we still don't make any progress.
Okay, and so my question is, so am I correct in saying if I ever get approached again by a so-called judge,
You wouldn't call him a so-called judge. He would be just who he is, a foreign administrative clerk of the barristers organization committing barratry against the people run from Fleet Street, England, having nothing to do with constitutional principle whatsoever.
Okay, so my question, right. So all I have to do is state that fact that.
Once you understand what things are, your language starts changing. You know, it's just like when you come here, you know, and you come amongst other Moors who know, your language will start changing. And your language will make it clear who's who and who's not.
Right.
You know, you'll no longer fall into that his, her, is, was, of type thing without qualification.
and it goes beyond.
And all law is specific. You know, once you comprehend that, you know, you're going to start living your life accordingly. And then logically, you don't give jurisdiction because much of the language is designed to support sanctum operations of relinquishing jurisdiction, not knowing that that's what's taking place. Well, you know, as you change your language, you start fixing this stuff.
Right.
And then what happens is, because remember, whenever there's an alleged case, of any claim operating from the municipalities, there's a bond that goes to it. And they start exercising that bond on 55 Water Street, whether there's litigation or not. When you start challenging the jurisdiction, it starts killing the bond. You know, this is why we try to get people to look at reality, start choking the straw man and stop trying to capture them, which they will not allow you to do. However, they'll make that promise as you wake up, thinking that that you're going to get some control over the Sister QV Trust, which they will not allow to happen. Go ahead, good brother.
Your Grace, I just want to point out that as you do from time to time, you took us to the circle, you took us to church. I'm just going to quote something from the Biblio Heliotext.
So we're dealing with the Constitution of your makeup.
That's right. Well, here, this is your comment. It's Genesis 1 for those of you scholars out there who want to confirm. 29. And it says, and God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. M-E-A-T. Is that
Of course, it tells you, now that same book that these people keep on claiming that they're in adherence with, you can see that they're actually in contradiction to it, absolutely. But remember, they will use what you call emotional statements in the book and put people under a guilt trip. This strips them of their identity.
Islam.
Under the guise that they're worshiping Jesus. But once you understand, you start killing it. And when they start talking to you on that venue, you correct them. Because you already know they ain't white people. And this is back to why they constantly refer to themselves as white people. And get the people to keep claiming that they're white people, which is a sovereign position. And then call them officer, and then they're using that position in a trust claim. It's called an oral trust statement. And then they're exercising claim over your estate that they have regulated under the Sister QV Trust system, i.e. under the Sister QV Trust,
Islam.
which are routed by the Social Security number, the QSIC number, the QSIC number on the marriage certificates, and the QSIC number on the birth certificates. All of them are bank routers. It's what it is. But the people have to become cognizant and start rejecting these instruments because that's what they're operating on. And this is why when people start waking up, they start promoting UCCs and financial statements, which is an application. A birthright doesn't need an application.
Islam.
It needs to be claimed.
Nationality can't be acquired.
Yes. That's why Joali said, you don't do anything else. Declare your nationality.
Is Article 15 of the Rights of Indigenous People, name and nationality?
Say it again.
Rights of Indigenous People, names and nationality? The right to claim name and nationality?
Oh yeah, in your rights of indigenous people, that's international law.
Right.
And then look beyond that, when they were doing these things in relationship to dissolution of colonial governments, that's when you deal with the Special Committee of 24, where 24 nations came together to dissolve this claim that the operators of the U.S. corporation were making against the Aboriginal people. That's why those statements are made.
And I remember. I remember. Well, we was listening to a past video when you were Brother Kaba, and
Yeah.
So and you were.
And keep in mind, he's a teacher.
Facts.
So I already know he knows basic etymology.
Right.
Now keep in mind, this is what a lot of people don't know. When I agreed to that, it was to be presented, he was to present a position, and I was to present a position. But being that wanted me to talk first, they killed his whole platform.
Right.
Destroyed it.
And Professor Larry kept coming.
Yeah, devil's advocate.
The emotional argument
And calling it
that has no
scholarship.
weight.
And calling it scholarship.
Oh,
But remember, this is what they practiced. This is why people unfortunately, who really understand and comprehend what's going on, will often refer to them as agents. It may or may not be true, but that's why you see that. Because once they study the fundamental operations and protocols, it becomes obvious that a scholar can make no excuse that they don't understand these things.
Absolutely.
You know, and so the deal is, you already know that black is a Middle English word.
That's why
It actually means pale spot.
that's why you couldn't answer the
Of course.
nationality question.
Of course. And then Sarnetta, as we were there, you know, in his apartment when we did that, got a big Moorish flag on the wall. He keep talking about these people are black.
Right. Right.
That's why people are questioning his credibility. For itself, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I won't knock him, just present the information. It is what it is.
Right.
You know, so you don't argue with these people. What you try to do is liberate the people. Not necessarily condemning others. Give them the knowledge that the Arabs have. You know what I mean? Don't make them followers. Teach them the rules and let them go.
Okay. Clear.
You know, and if they're sincere, nature does the rest. There goes the Constitution. But it's not what people think it is. And so when they're looking at the Constitution for the United States, they're not understanding that it's derivative of the Constitution of the makeup of the body, dealing with divine law and your right of divine right, allodial, to exist and to claim right.
That's why when people bring up the Constitution, or when we bring up the Constitution, and everybody, the audience is waiting for them to say, "Oh, you know, Zaz, you're right. You can."
They will say it properly, which you already know in
Right.
many instances. Then in public, they'll play dumb because these people are their property.
And they wait till they shut it down, and we go last, and all is known.
Yeah, all is known. You know, and the real deal is that these grand governors of the Moorish Science Temple of America are supposed to be the first ones out in the public venue clearing up this mess. And then they're mad because people who are great sealed and doing the work that they were charged to do, that they have actually breached.
And they still go out muddying the water with
Yes.
the argument of right to travel.
Yes.
Pause for 1 second. The right to travel was an issue before there was an idea or creation of a driver's license.
Yes.
Traveling was walking around and being able to sit on the back of a horse and buggy if you was if you had it like that. So the argument there is no argument.
There isn't, but it's an argument with people who don't know civics, promoted by those who've been misguiding them.
Right.
This is where belief systems serve their purpose. This is why they don't want people to understand that belief is an elementary degree for children, and that faith is for teenagers, and that knowledge is for adults, or what we call adults, or mature beings. And this is where, you know, the Bible in Septuaginta makes reference that, you know, when you become a man, you put away your childish things. There's no debate in it. But people who don't read debate it because it doesn't support their beliefs. And they think that when you start dealing with the facts, that you're abandoning God type thing, without examining what they themselves are saying. You know, including the fact that the rulers know that God is a verb transitive. It's not a noun or the name of the supreme being whatsoever.
Coming in, which meaning good. So if it's both German, God and good is both German, then
God comes from good, Old High German, which means to call upon, to pour out,
to evoke.
and to evoke.
Yeah.
This is where you get the libation
Right.
practices.
Right, you did teach that.
Yeah, because you're guiding, you're not worshiping a God, you're guiding.
Facts.
But of course, the masters aren't supposed to know that. And the priesthood have been controlling the masses by keeping them dumb to what's really going on.
Islam, you also stated in one lecture that the GOD represented gold, oil, and
Government ordinance products.
Right.
And this is why it's important to go back to Hagia Sophia, so that you can put the Spanish Inquisition and the Inquisition operations in perspective. And then also comprehend why secret societies exist at all.
I just want to clear up, I don't mean to point, I'm sorry. Just want to clear up one thing I just wanted to help clear up a point for the
for the Moabite is, you mentioned about the administrative clerk. One thing they will not violate is your will. That's the natural law. So they will attempt to trick you to your consent. And once you consent to be in their jurisdiction. But if you stay on your platform of who's who, your jurisdiction, there's no debate there.
I see it, I
Yeah.
experienced it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so that's good. Now, so I want to apologize to you all, if I'm dragging a little bit because I was up all night working. So if y'all want to mind, that's why I'm dragging. But the deal of it is, all addicts get this information, which is why they're addicts. And addict chambers are in all organizations. Are we clear?
Clear.
So when people think that one organization has this knowledge and the other one doesn't, they're sorely mistaken. And again, once you comprehend this is why you live in naivety. Regardless of the party line that they talk, you already know they're full of shit. And that's the truth.
Clear.
And then that people won't like you when you tell the truth. They think you're abandoning the club. They do. Very good, brother.
So one of my brothers is working on a carry license for a private security company.
Yeah. So
Right.
you already understand that a license.
Clear on that.
Yeah.
So as I'm sharing the information, trying to get people to read, people just have a very short reader span. Study span. I promise you that. Attention span. As I'm going over the facts and shedding away all the subject matter, we still get stuck on the subject matter. Like the subject matter is the substance or the substance that keeps us alive.
Of the issue.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's why subject matter jurisdiction can be challenged at any time, before, during, or after a claimed conviction. So people need to comprehend that they can't make a claim and then it stands because they do it under color of law. This is back to that principle. This is why it's important for people to understand jurisdiction. And why people who are abusing the people don't teach jurisdiction. So they're part of the problem. And they hide behind the God game, getting kickbacks under the 501c3 agreement set up by Lyndon Baines Johnson to control his Negro marching guys. That's what the 501c3 is. Go ahead, good brother.
Does latches impact the writ of error on subject matter jurisdiction, and I'm not talking about fraud?
And this is why you'll see even in the Dred Scott case, the docket says plaintiff in error. So you're dealing with standing. And so again, he can't be transacting business on another man's name and talk about rights. This is why the argument is, regardless of the territory, that he has no claim. He's not plaintiff in error.
And the Dungy case, which validates and verifies that it's allowed to be a Negro or black.
Oh yeah, fact. This is why we share it with people, because that should be looked at with the
Dred Scott
case.
Yeah.
Most people around the world, scholars, use the Dred Scott case as the cornerstone for dealing with these rights and lack of rights in relationship to jurisdiction. This is again why the European is falsely promoting sovereign citizen argument. Misclassifying. And then, of course, people don't rebut it, and then they're controlling the narrative. What they're doing is controlling the narrative of the people. But again, it's back to the press, our own press, which you already talked about. That we would not be able to shovel ourselves out from under the lies that are heaped upon us every day. That's what that's about.
Clear.
I have a question on the floor.
We can't hear you, so you gotta get on the phone.
There's just a question on it.
Yeah, but get on the mic.
Get on the mic.
Because you remember you got a soft voice.
I know I have something.
knew I had a song.
You can have it. Just let him know. Miles L. If Grand Sheik could give a few points of reference regarding the Moorish connection to the Confederate flag.
All right, the Confederate flag has nothing to do with constellation.
Come on with it.
Having nothing to do with the negative that's often put on it.
Islam.
So understand that. But yet, the people under their code system keep looking at it as an attack on them because their concepts are wrong about Kuiko's Ku Klux Klan. Not understand that these flags are based on cosmology.
Mundane markers.
You got that right.
Okay. Okay, so it's like the Galactic Cross?
Huh?
Is that the Galactic Cross?
Of course it is.
Okay. That's a statement. The Bible say the fruit, vegetables, nuts, and seeds are meat. Okay. Thank you for that, Tion Bay. Thanks for what you do, Grand Sheik. Thanks for what you do.
Oh, I try.
You don't try, though. You do. You do it. Islam. Absolutely.
You know, that's again why those who know the truth usually walk in a narrow path. Because people who should be telling this information turn against you.
Yes, they will, man.
Because they're actually angry that the people are waking up. Because they're part of the problem. But again, as the people comprehend this, they themselves will lose their naivety. And in that loss of naivety, they will render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And nature herself will start rescuing them. Go ahead.
The importance, good or bad, of maintaining or disposing of the Confederate symbols, the statue.
Maintain.
I know Grand Sheik going go just a little bit, Grand Sheik. Don't
When you claim your stuff, you'll find that the European has limited to no culture.
Islam.
He's taking your stuff and misrepresenting it. And
Islam.
writing himself into history and writing you out.
Islam.
That is the public-private venue of H.O.R.A.M.
Islam.
You know.
As well, sometimes to me it seems like people forget that there were so-called good folks on both sides
All
back
right.
then.
All right.
We're talking about the North and South battles. There were people who didn't view so-called the chattel slavery process as something that they wanted to abolish.
Right.
And there were people up north who saw that the exact opposite.
And they both look like us.
And they both look like us.
That's right.
Facts.
Yes.
Right, man.
Nobody knows whether the line was north or south, east or west, Mason or Dixon, but it spanned all across this demarcated part of the continent.
Yes.
But it only said the 13 states.
Yes. And
So how did the 13 states, or how did
there's
the
13
free
states
to
are companies.
right? So they adopted the Indiana, or the, what would you call that? The $2 land grant.
What's the purpose?
The Indiana
purchases.
Louisiana purchase. Yeah, there you go.
No, it's given charters.
Louisiana purchase.
It's given charters, which is just a license.
Right.
So it turned a charter to.
Right, big claims.
Yeah.
Right, establishments.
Right, it turned the charter to a colony when they had enough body of people.
You saying it turned the charter into a colony?
A royal colony,
Okay.
right.
And remember, even some of the corporate states were not called states until actually around 1810. So
Right.
people's concepts of what they think all this stuff is seriously incorrect.
How about glorified workers' union?
Same thing. So you look at the Pinkertons and then you look at the police contracting with the United States Corporation and Company to force these people into servitude, literally murdering people.
That's right.
So like
And so the Pinkertons are essentially the U.S. corporation police departments in contract with the United States Corporation Company to destabilize the people of the land, etc., and to murder many of them to keep the people disheveled. And that's a fact. And this is again why it's important to make as many people conscious as you can, you know, and why, as these people are waking up, the Europeans refer to us as the Fourth World War. You know, because people's consciousness alone disrupts the system.
Which means the third
Clear.
is already in place.
Say it again?
So which means the third world war is currently going on silently.
Against you.
Yes.
Yes.
Islam.
Well, you talked about the corporation, so like you talked about, it's only 13 corporations that started from 1607. The first one was Virginia and ended in 1732. The last one was Georgia. So these are corporations that King Edward granted what you call a license to come over and set up corporations. And when those corporations was formed and they built enough bodies, politics, and tricks within those licensing to operate and do business, they were able to go from a license to a royal colony. And within your royal colony, you can create your municipalities, your churches, and things of that nature. So if you follow the timeline of that, that gets into the conflict between the permission to only do, you know, the commercial exchange with the natural people. So, you know, touching the indigenous people to the land. So that's where the conflict came in, i.e., now let's deal with the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, because we're going to have another war.
From the land.
Right.
Their whole unum sanctum, that's what the public-private argument is really about.
Right.
And most people, you know, be cognizant of that. They don't understand the Knights of Columbus Ku Klux Klan over 1854, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1863, Chicago, Illinois. And the Mummers Parade that's exercised at Shakamatsu, that you call Philadelphia, every year, dealing with physical operations of Roman conquest, which is January 1st, having nothing to do with the cosmological nature of the vernal equinox, which they call the stars in the east. They'll say East Star. Yeah, which is the vernal equinox.
Question, brother?
The 13 original states were all companies, the Hudson Bay
They call them states, they were companies. And that's another thing we must get right here. Stop calling them states and start calling them companies.
The Hudson Bay Company went up into Canada, and as they came down,
They have the same international number,
that's right,
Canada and U.S. corporations.
they were all subdivisions of the same umbrella corporation.
Exactly.
And when the war broke out and when it became convenient, they went from company to state to territory to whatever it had to be to get to day one.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is the deal. People need to understand that the United States Corporation Company and Canada Corporation Company are sisters under the same international number, run from the Chancery and the Circle Church on Fleet Street, England, etc. So the people's concepts that when they go to these venues that they're dealing with law, distinguished from human trafficking, it's incorrect. You know, so even stating that when you're dealing with these magistrates changes the venue, because they're figuring you don't know that.
That's why we gotta be clear on branding, because they branded or named everything.
That's why they insist on branding our people Negro, black, and color, which disconnects them from the human family. Also disconnects them from treaty obligation. Because no such people did any constitutional principles or treaties.
Clear.
Islam. I did my report that you assigned for me on Wegener's disease. I didn't want to do it in front of everyone. I didn't know, but I'll show it to you after after the session.
Right on, good brother. same way when you share with others, it becomes their own. We gotta get our people out of follower mentality.
Islam.
You know, get them into dealing with facts and getting together with men and women who deal with the facts and start getting some things done.
Islam.
You know. All right, any other questions?
Well, let me just say this. After meeting with some administrators or some barrister members and sharing some facts with them, they turned around and told my brother that we need people like y'all to keep this government in check.
Mm-hmm.
We the only ones doing this.
Yeah. The world is
I
looking.
can't go to a temple and get a handful of Moors who've been to court and had stuff, and they dismissed it. I've had stuff dismissed, but they dismissed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't find them outside of where
Course not.
we at.
It's called Unum Sanctum Operations. It's called the Negro Act, for which they agreed to be a party to.
1724.
They are colored. You know, they're exercising color of law, color of authority. They're in severe breach, and no one calls them. Here is caveat emptor, set forth by Prophet H.O.R.A.M. There we go. Anyway, go ahead, brother.
This is unrelated to the topic, but I'm interested. Where could I find information about what is Harriet Tubman, her name? But you said it was something else. You were going to do a lecture on that, but I kind of want to go and see.
Well, really, it is doing some detail on Hagia Sophia, because people don't know how far back this goes. And there are assumptions that just the Europeans are oppressing you. That's really what it is. But it's a subject matter within its own right. And one of the things that we've been constantly doing is trying to get people to reject the venue, because that's where their immediate effect or remedy will be. And expect them in the background starting to study themselves, because you can't make people know stuff that takes time for them to become a party to. You know, and so information is interesting, but it doesn't become their own until they really comprehend what the status is in relationship to it. Really.
Grand Chief,
Yes.
I'll let you sign out. Want to go ahead and close out?
Yeah.
Close out? You want to go ahead and close out, Grand Chief?
Hmm?
You want to go ahead and close out for the evening?
Yeah. Anyway, we want to thank you all for supporting the House of Rebuilding one of the things that is prevalent and true is that this is a venue where the liberation of humanity is the forefront of our activities. So we expect those who have been using this venue to support their venues to also make sure they make some contributions to the House of Reawakening Their Minds. Because Dr. Naila have been, sacrificing to keep this venue open. So recognize your obligation to yourself, because most people will not take a position and tell you these things, that we will get into these subject matters here at the House of Reawakening Minds that others skip around. But again, in due time, you will purge yourself of the mind control systems. And this is why people are threatened by this information, because they've been living off your virtues all the time.